Hello everyone, my name is Ellie Sterner, and today I will be presenting on the JavaScript library epoch. I'm sorry about my voice, allergy season. So for a brief agenda, I'll be giving a general overview of what this JavaScript library is and why you would want to use it, how to set it up for your own application, and then a basic workflow, and finally rendering real-time visuals, which is something I will explain coming up. So why did I choose this library to talk about? For my side project, I was doing an application that would connect farmers with extra produce and consumers who wanted a local organic option. And so when I was going about this, I wanted to display for the farmer what they were selling. So if you can't see, it's just a simple list that lists how many of each fruit or vegetable they were selling. But it looks kind of boring, and I thought to myself, why couldn't I show something more similar to this, like Facebook, where you could really see when your site was being viewed the most, and you could have some more insights for the app owner. And this is when I came into Epoch. And so what Epoch basically is it's a charting library that relies on another visualization tool called D3. And it essentially allows you to render two types of charts. One is a basic chart, and the other is called a real-time visual. With a basic chart, it's just static data. So you set your coordinates or you set your values, and then it presents it on your web page. With a real-time visual, it changes as time progresses. So just to reiterate, there's two types of charts, basic and real-time. And first, I'll be discussing what a basic chart is. So as you can see, there's several charts here. You've got your line, scatter, area, bar, bubble, and pie chart. So to set up Epoch, you can use any sort of package manager like npm or bower to install the library, and then you include two scripts in your HTML file. The first is the D3 library, which is that visualization tool I mentioned earlier, and the second is the Epoch library. Additionally, you include a style sheet that is an Epoch CSS file, which includes some things like default classes. So the first step in your workflow is to create the actual container that your chart will be rendered in. So in this code snippet, you can see that I have an ID because you need to be able to select this container at a later point. And I also have a class, which is a default class, which is in that style sheet. And it basically dictates some things like color or some other general properties. And then finally, we have options here, which are some more specific styling options, such as height and width. OK. The next step is to specify the data. And this is one of the best parts about Epoch. Data, regardless of chart, is entered very similarly. So you have an array of objects, and each object has two attributes, which is your label and your value. So in the first one, which I was using for a bar or area chart, we have two different objects with two different labels, and then values, which are coordinates. In the second option, which was for a pie chart, you also have an array of objects with a label and a value, but this time your value, instead of being coordinate, is just a proportion, which makes sense for a pie chart. Finally, we combine steps 1 and step 2 and create our actual instance. So in our actual instance here, I've called it our area chart instance because I'm making an area chart. I select our container, which had the ID of area, and then I use the epoch method and specify two pieces of information. The first is type, which basically tells Epoch what kind of chart you want rendered. And the second is our data, which we just explained in the other slide. So finally, here's our chart that's rendered. So the Epoch method inserts the chart into the container and then automatically resizes to fill the entire container. There's also some other methods where you can update and change the chart. So you can update your data using the .update method, and you can also change the options, which are styling. So just to reiterate, this is my HTML file. So here's where I specify the container, the data, and then where I initialize it. And so here's my side project app. I mean, it's pretty basic, this chart, but now the farmer can see that he actually sells the most corn. So now I'm going to go into the second part of what Epoch does, and this is in rendering real-time charts. And real-time charts obviously change in real time. So you can use some of the similar charts that I mentioned earlier, like area and bar, but there are also some other really cool charts, such as gauge and heat map. And I want to show you quickly what these look like, because they look cool in real time. So here, you can see it changing. Bar, there's the gauge, and then there's the heat map. So next I'm going to go through, before I even go through the workflow, I wanted to talk about two distinctions between the real-time and the basic chart. First is when you specify type in the instance. Instead of it just being a line or a bar type, it's now you append time to it, so it's time.line or time.bar. And the second is really critical. It's your push method, and that's how data keeps updating and pushing in real time. So you just have your instance, the push method, and then the new data that you're pushing in. So now I'll go into our workflow for a real-time visual. So again, I create my container with my ID. And second, I start with just my original data point of like my original starting point. And so you can see that I have a coordinate again because I'm doing a bar chart. But instead of having just an X and Y value, I have a time and a Y value. And then I create my actual instance. So again, I select my container. I call the epoch method. And then instead of this time just having a general type, I have a type time.bar, so it's a bar chart, but in real time. And then I have my original starting data, which I just discussed. And then I also have two helper methods. So my first function, getMilli, returns the current date in milliseconds. And the second function just returns a random value. So for that coordinate, the time and the Y value, these are just some helper functions. I also included another element that when you click it, it calls this function, and this is what's going to push in new data. So I create my new data using those helper functions, and then I'm pushing in the new data to my original instance. And then I can show you what this looks like. So here's my element, and every time I click it, it's pushing in new data. So it's randomly generated, but it can change on your web page, and I think it adds a lot. So in conclusion, the Epoch JavaScript library allows you to include some really interesting visuals onto your application, and especially in such a data-focused world, I think this is really critical. And finally, it allows you to provide insights to your client that are really helpful. I hope you enjoyed this talk.